apologize for the foobar. So, thank you guys for staying beyond the tea break. This panel is actually one of my most favorite panels because we get to actually interview like actual, AI startups, and we have a unicorn among our midst since last week. Actually, when I first titled it, I was like, do I call it a unicorn? But then when the news broke, which I will share later, and there was, okay, yeah, this makes sense. This panel makes sense. So first off, maybe for each of the guests, could you maybe make an introduction of what you do, what does your company does, and then I'll start asking the questions later. Okay, Rocky?
Sure. Cool.
Let's go.
Ladies first.
Thank you so much. So my name is Jennifer Zhang, and I'm co-founder and president of WIZ.AI. So WIZ.AI actually building 7 years ago, 2 seats at the Block 71 here in Singapore, and now actually expanding 17 countries. And what we do actually is a voice agent to automate the whole customer engagement journey, and rate transfer like the call center for the enterprise. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. And my name is Justin Liu. I'm co-founder and chief architect of GenSpark. We're a Silicon Valley-based tech company. We're building the all-in-one AI workspace for knowledge workers around the globe. So our mission is basically to help all the knowledge workers to get things done on our platform.
Hi, my name is Rocky. I'm founder and CEO of AGI House. So to explain AGI House actually quite takes some effort. First, we have a community of all the AI founders, researchers. The biggest names that you ever heard, like founders OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, like all those guys were there early days. And then we have a company called AGI House Labs that professionally runs the community, that organizes all the events like hackathons and dinners, private events together, actually serving 2 purposes. One is pushing the frontier AI research. So we are a very strong researcher community. And then the second part is really the diffusion of technology. We think the part of AGI is not a smart model. I think 3 years ago, this is not very obvious because Sam from OpenAI keeps saying AGI is there, AGI is there. But today, you will probably, AGI is still a little far away because we have that the realization that we think AGI is when the model is really being deployed in the real world applications. And gradually, we're building towards that. That's our mission. That's what AGI has mission, accelerate humanity transition to AGI. So we do have another part is that we do have a VC funds to invest in early stage companies because we see so many of those great founders was hang out the community. Early days of, you see, the Perplexity, Cognition, LangChain, Llama Index, all those names that has built in the early days of AI has been part of a community. So that's part of our thesis of the VC fund. Yeah.
I see. And okay, so AI, the development has been pretty fast, pretty, almost breathless. Yeah, I'm not sure about you guys, but it takes an effort for me to even be updated with the new trends and stuff. I would say, what was the one thing or 2 things, 1 or 2 things that in the past year that has surprised you, right, with regards to how fast AI has gone, or like a significant, let's say, innovation that you've seen. So.
Yeah, we actually see the first hand. We started AGI House like at the end of 2022, the beginning of 2023. That's when ChatGPT happens. But before that, we have a group of people like Andre Capacity, he was a founding member of OpenAI, Sergey Brin. We have small gatherings on a regular basis, talk about foundation models. Because at that time, the GPT-3 is already, we can see is very powerful, but we still trying to figure out how to use these things. So that's why companies like the Harrison Chase, the founder of LangChain, they're trying, okay, we need some framework to make sure we can build applications to exchange with the models. So we host a lot of events around like hackathons to invite every Saturday we invite 100, 150 people come build around the models, and then ChatGPT comes out. I still remember the GPT-4 hackathons, one of the most consequential events. That's when GPT-4 released. The whole world was going crazy, and that's so with that, the models continued scaling for the last few years, and then a lot of frameworks, infrastructure being built. You see a lot of the compute, the framework, different kind of like a Llama Index, LangChain, the kind of framework for data interaction, and then agents, how to build applications. So last year until this year, you see a lot of applications. People are starting to talk about applications. And the main thing that the biggest industry event is like, I think one of the things like Ilya says at one of the conferences is like pre-training as we know it is like to hitting some point. Even though scaling law continue to evolve, but I think the biggest realization, if you see Mark from Meta, he hired the guy, Zhang is one of the guys responsible for scaling reinforced learning at OpenAI early days. That translates to the next generation of the scaling laws about reinforced learning application layer of things. So we'd actually see those trends over the years.
Just for our audience perspective, when he meant pre-training, he meant like training of the models, either using human supervision or using like machine training. So because of a lot of work that DeepSeek has done, we now don't need that much human training, and that's probably why Scale AI got acquired. I think it's good for the investors. How about
I'd like to add a few like perspective from my side. Like the things that surprised me most is like how smart these models got and how little they can actually do. What do you mean by that? Like you see like recent releases of Gemini, right? You try Gemini, it's pretty good at multimodal, like image generation, content understanding. And you, like last year, like with all the OpenAI models, like 01, 03, it's pretty good at deep research, like deep reasoning. And with cloud models, very strong at tool use. But they are like brilliant brains without arms and legs. They can come up with a plan, how to like reason about how to build a website, but they couldn't really, generate a website and deploy it. So that's the opportunity we see as GenSpark. We are the company building the infrastructure for large language models. We're building the arms and legs for those brilliant brains. So on our platform, we can actually connect to like 150 plus tools and 20 plus premium data sets. And we can orchestrate the strengths of specific strengths of all these large language models to deliver end-to-end finished work for users.
I think I can talk a little bit about the emerging countries like, Southeast Asia or Latin America. So basically now we equalize in the willingness of adoption AI. So it's basically before, not so many people are because we, in the market 7 years, you see the first couple of years, everybody's just take it a very, cutting edge trial products. But since last year to right now, everybody really push into the workflow. And this is parts we can see. And second parts I see the maturity of how people adopt AI into the enterprise getting much, much better. Because this morning I heard someone say we tried the POC, 95% of the POCs failed in the enterprise. So we come back with the very bubbled, fancy everybody can using AI. Get into the how can land it into what's the ROI, what's the best for security level, and how can it scale up. This kind of questions. I think it's the angle of it's getting more mature. And we are very looking forward to see how can we the partner the product team solution team like us can tap into that and give you more as a partner angle, not really giving your before boom you can use it, but now you can jump in really as a consultant, say hey, this is the whole workflow we try to change. And before it's the voice is voice agent talk bot, but now getting is how starting from the voice as interface to get into that and really transfer into the workflow for getting better ROI for the enterprise. So accept awareness-wise and the willingness-wise and the mature of readiness-wise is getting much, much more different right now. Yeah.
Very good. So, Jennifer, your company focuses a lot on the Southeast Asian and South American voices, with very good fidelity. And most of the contracts are enterprise contracts. What lessons, and I'm sure we have some consultants, in our midst. What are some, I would say, corporate lessons that you learned in dealing with, Southeast Asian enterprises and customers? Yeah.
I think we mainly our customers actually telecoms and finance institutions and also e-commerce. So we're trying to helping with two parts. One part is actually if you go to the big giants, so they have something you want to the AI transformation. Especially we are starting from call center, but I think our business is slightly push more into the workflow automation. From some ticket system, there's ton of the employee engagement. So this part. And the second part, you see a lot of Southeast Asia company, e-commerce, they go pretty well. Not only for one country, but they quickly even go to the Latin America. Actually, I met a lot of guys recently come back from Mexico City. I met a lot of peers from Southeast Asia and brought up business there. So we try to actually how to see we can scale up the business with them. And this is sometimes if they call center starting the business rocket up, but the operation teams is very sling role, and we are the person jumping and say, hey, let's try AI first. Then we can blend it into the human in loop, how your whole workflow can be quickly set up, rather than just using the traditional way to do this. Yeah.
And on the topic of automation, task automation, you guys have, for Justin, you guys have started doing a lot of work trying to do agentic workflow automation. What are some of the, I would say, insights? Because we see a lot of people building agents, but what makes GenSpark so special in terms of how the automation works? Yeah, could you share that?
Yeah, so when we started, we were thinking about at that time, augmented search was a thing, and we were actually among the first to build the deep research feature a year ago, even before OpenAI released this deep research functionality. And we thought they were a breakthrough. We can browse through a lot of websites and generate a really comprehensive report. But then we figured most of users actually didn't stop there, right? They would immediately launch Excel or PowerPoint to copy paste the result to different applications to build what the deliverables they want. That's then came to a realization that we should continue, right? Why stop at the information collection, right? We should continue to get the work finished for user. So then we started building something called a super agent back in April. And after that's launched in 10 days, we get about 10 million annualized revenue. And within 5 months, we reached $50 million annualized revenue. I think the market proved we were very successful.
Yeah. Just if I'm not wrong, you guys already broke the record, right? Because last time you used to be Slack. Right, and then later on, there was, I can't remember, there was another company that does about 50 mil. I think you guys getting 50 mil ARR, potential ARR in 5 months is actually pretty remarkable. Was it mostly through organic growth, or was it a...
Yeah, absolutely, word of mouth, no paid users, yeah.
Yeah, and this is why he's a unicorn. So how about Rocky? Are there any startups in the AGI house that you see? What are they doing differently in terms of, let's say, AI automation that you might want to highlight?
You mean in terms of enterprise adoption, right? Yes. So of course we have this Jennifer's a traditional go-to-market the motion, and we have I think. For GenSpark, it's more like a prosumer play, right? That's another organic prosumer kind of use case, and slowly venture into enterprise. I think that could be another roadmap. We see a lot of success actually in Silicon Valley. A lot of companies, the high growth company, they start off with the prosumer play. Actually, if you see a lot of the high growth companies reaching to 100 million ARR in a very short period of time, you see. But I think there's another thing that's also happening. In the way how we see the AJ House is called. It's been played in private equity for quite some time. We call it technology-enabled roll up. So people actually buying up a small business that they already running that, they're building the tech stack. For example, the voice agent to change contact center. Actually, there's a founder. He is the founder of Cresta. He is a unicorn also for voice agent company. Live at AJ House right now. He started a new company, the CEO started a new company, specifically buy up the traditional call centers, build their own tech-enabled like a voice infrastructure, and then transform the company, increase the EBITDA, and then so that the company becomes more valuable, and then buy up more companies, and then transform. That's another way we see it. So we're seeing all this, I guess, by the end of the day, is solving one problem, right? How to really adopting the technology in the most effective way. So that's, I think, a different industry, different product, like in why it's different strategy. I think that's what we see. They have different ways of going to market. Yeah.
So actually, I got one question that's directed to both Jennifer and Justin. Right, because I think both of you are operating in a space whereby there's a potential for all the bigger giants to come in, right? So I mean, like for WIZ actually outperforms a lot of like voice models, including Google's and Amazon's voice models on benchmarking tests for personalization, and then for the agentic workflow also, you outperform the just standard RAG workflow applications. With all these giants, and then Google just dropped anti-gravity, and they're actually going into the agentic space. How would you both respond to such challenges? Like, maybe start with Jennifer first.
I think in our current, there is ecosystem players. I think there is foundation players, and they're vertical application players. So for us, we're more considered we are in the right track. So, we see a lot of call center be transferred, and Southeast Asia, like a lot of, enterprises try to automate their flows. So I think there was two parts. We're quite comfortable. Number one is actually, since we're working with a lot of company for a long time. So basically, in the industry of this vertical's know-how and data will be one of the very strong parts. I think we can, it's actually the flying wheels, you continuous improve. So how people do this, customer acquisition for the whole user funnels, how you calculate the CPS, and how your AI can really contribute for each funnel. So this is something the data as we have for one part. And the second part, I think it's basically there's always people need to finish the last mile delivery. So there's also so many, nice nuclear weapon looks like there, but you need to really land it and really dive into the enterprise legacy systems and make sure with all this integration and security So make sure the deliver ROI is stable. So that's actually two parts. I think as a startup company, and we still have some kind of advantage to say in the certain geography and verticals, we can maintain this kind of mode ongoing. Yeah.
Justin?
Yeah, so we actually work very closely with all the frontier labs, including OpenAI and Anthropic and Google Gemini. We don't see them as competitor, more like strategic partners. So I see there are a lot of collaboration and a synergy point because we actually have real use cases. We can work together and for them to understand what customers actually want. And we also want to have access to the latest technology. And in terms of for example, Microsoft and Google Suite, they are also building the all-in-one workspace, kind of workspace for end users. I feel that's a validation of this product market fit. So I feel this market is very large, and there's not like reaching like zero-sum competition yet. We feel like there, for example, last week we Microsoft and GenSpark announced Agent 365 platform, and we actually have a deep integration into their platform. Yeah.
So, Rocky, I would say, among all your startups within the AGI house, I'm sure you're not allowed to have favorites, but do you have any ones that you want to highlight in terms of, let's say, that are perhaps trying to at the forefront of what AI is doing? Yeah.
Yes, so we actually, AGI House has, like I mentioned, has an ambitious goal. We actually strategically curated people or companies doing specific things. So our own thesis, the inner layer is the foundation model layer. I know right now the bigger foundation model, the large language model, that wall is probably too heavy to be in that wall again, to people to enter and to build another foundation model, bigger LLM companies. But there are still opportunities doing a very specialized model. That's where early days we invest in companies like Katisha doing voice agent, and the Pika Labs. They actually come out of AGI House, the founder leaves AGI House and start a company, like video generation models. And we see specific, and now you see like other enterprise specific models that is going to come out, like Eigen AIs, those kind of things. And then on top of that, we see the infrastructure as we progress. You see like right now, the industry is starting to shift towards focusing on, let's say, from the model layer, reinforced learning, the frameworks to build reinforced learning infrastructure. That's the companies we can starting to curate and then investing on. And then from the application layer, as you see, the agentic applications, a lot of tools to be built. Companies like Compose, the MCP servers, and building frameworks in like the most like latest hot topics like self-evolving agents. So basically that means the agents continue to learn. I think you guys probably touched on that. It's like become better and better. So we need that to make that happen. I think if that's where the industry is going, we need some kind of framework. People are starting to work on that. So we're starting to see application there. And then on the last is the application layer. We see like, coding agent, like anti-gravity, you see that the competition is far from over because, Cursor, the company, actually we saw the founders like back in 2000, like early days when they started, one of people who work at AGI House, his name is Marco. He was helping me start hosting Hackathon early days. Now he's a partner at Andreessen. He led the seed round of Cursor. So we see that in very early days. And then now it's like a more than $10 billion valuation kind of company. So we see coding agent and other, like the other company, like the company that's, I think probably you haven't heard about that much yet. Is a company called Higgsfield.
Higgsfield, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a user.
You're a user. Okay, amazing. So one of our portfolio companies, and then I know GenSpark is amazing growth to 50 million in 5 months. I think Higgsfield has similar metrics. They grow to 100 million, I think, in less than 8 months or so. So right now it's already 100 million ARR. So it's a crazy growth in those things. Yeah.
So, okay, so we have some folks in the audience I know who are like startups, and they will also love to, because we have like Higgsfield, who is now like as you said 100 over mil. We have WIZ, which is actually a 9-digit valuation company. If any one of them would want to start an AI startup, how would they organize themselves? Right, because as a VC, I realized that a lot of times part of how the founding team organizes itself, how it acquires customers, is actually super important. It's one of the things people don't really talk about. So how would one, let's say, organize themselves to prepare themselves to, if they want to hit like those metrics that would get you your $1 billion valuations? Maybe I'll start with Jennifer first. Yeah. Ladies.
Wow, it's a very good question. So I saw so many, recently I see a lot of solo founders really leverage a lot of tools and starting very, very small angles. So it is true, so actually we just discussed the questions. When I see a company, you need to have a very fancy, a business guy. And also you have a strong product teams, and separately you have the R&D teams that very heavy. But now we consider just the boundary of product manager, product head, or the R&D head is merged. So actually the whole teams, probably before the budget for us, it's we need to, have 1/3, 40%, or even sometimes, the heavy technology company over 50 plus. But now you can see less. And maybe your costs will increase because they go to all these, to the foundation model or the training fees. But the rest of that, I think the whole structure of how you consider started with idea, and leverage that from the website, the mock-up of the products and soft launch, and also how you're recruiting our team, the budget, all be really transferred. So I think if I do start right now, I think as I mentioned, maybe we're very, very lean, 2 or 3 people, good taste of technology, quickly for executions and run. That's something it's much more different right now. Yeah.
Justin?
Yeah, so we feel companies formed today is very different from companies founded 2 or 3 years ago. When we started as the AI native team. What does that mean? So we want to keep the team size very, very small. So right now we have under 50 people that we actually launched 20 plus products over past 8 months. On average, one product per week or 2 weeks. So we have very best people since day one. So our co-founders and founding team members are from top companies in the world. Our CEO Eric, for example, he used to be with Microsoft and helped build Bing. And our CEO Van was MIT and Y Combinator alumni, founded and sold his company. So we're a team that we know how to build a product scale and how to deliver quality and move fast. I think in this era, in the AI era, you have to move very fast and build the product and learn from the real user feedback and iterate on it. So the speed and form the feedback loop fastest as you can is your mode, your only mode.
Do you have a growth team in your team?
For a long period of time, we actually don't do active marketing. It's just word of mouth. We start doing that now in some market, but yeah, for a very long period of time, it's just word of mouth.
Rocky?
Yeah, I can echo Justin's words. Speed is everything in Silicon Valley. We can see that. I know in Asia, China especially, they have this 1996 culture.
7-Eleven.
7-Eleven, okay. Amazing, yeah. I think Silicon Valley is starting to catch up. The reason I think why we got a lot of publicity early days of AI House, because we are a group of the PhDs, Stanford AI PhDs live in the house. The only thing we do is talk about AI every day, 24/7. And we did, the end result is amazing. All the people live there end up doing amazing things. You see the companies like Picker Labs, they just come out of a few months, they become a $500 million company in a few months of time frame. So we see the meteoric horizon. A lot of those ideas is due to the relentless focus and the speed. So I think to back up a little bit about as a founder, I think there's multiple dimensions we should think about to prepare yourself. Number one is I think, especially in this world, AI right now, everyone's talking about AI, but I think it should be, there's a lot of noise, secondary noise, and the fundamental thing that you want to ask yourself, is this the idea that you're working on will still exist if the model continue to become more intelligent or the other frameworks become better and better? So that's what we call it AI native thinking. So it's you should have that and prepare yourself. And number two is a team organization. Like Justin mentioned, it's a unicorn company, they only have 50 persons. So you should be very careful who are in your team to build up. But because we can see at AI House, we see that the trends actually plan out very well. Early days, because AI is still very, very technical driven. So we see that most of the success of frontier labs are researcher background. You have a PhD or PhD dropouts, our favorite founder profile. But as it grows, and the people, the agentic phase, you see people really have domain expertise. I know Eric is like, used to be the search at Baidu. That's how he can pull that off from GameSpark. I think the domain expertise and the people really has like the be able to execute on ideas in application domains. Very, very important. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one question. Anyone in the audience like to ask a question? Sure, no one? Oh, Miranda.
Thank you for the panelists for sharing very interesting conversation. I just want to ask a quick question regarding, what do you think about APAC region specifically? For, we all know it's fast-growing markets and a lot of innovation happening here, right here in Singapore and also in the APAC region. So what do you think maybe the upcoming years, maybe they have more AI unicorns coming from APAC regions? That's my question. I'm Miranda, by the way. Thank you.
Well, I can take it first. I guess actually very optimistic about it. If you asked me this question a year ago, probably the answer is different. But right now, there's a joke. Silicon Valley is running on Q1. This is Alibaba, the open source model. So because of that, I think right now, I know the States is doing their strategy because of the previous strategy is closed source. A lot of the other parties are promoting the open source strategy right now. But we do think there's a lot of consequential impacts because of all this recent developments on those from DeepSeek all the way to right now the QN. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like Singapore. I've been visiting Singapore a few times. I think Singapore is the place that really understands the innovation and the future of work. So our mission is to help the 1 billion knowledge workers around the globe. I think in Singapore region, Asian Pacific, there are about 400 million knowledge workers.
600 million.
600 million, yeah. And also we have a large of our user bases in Asian Pacific, Japan, Korea. I would say Singapore could be our innovation center, the hub for our expansion in the Asian Pacific region. We want to keep investing more in this region in Singapore.
Of course, yes, because we're based here and we're starting from here, and we foresee 2 parts. The whole ecosystem growing quite well. So many talents come to Singapore building the startup companies, AI from here. And second one is you see a lot of, people go to market, from Valley, and Singapore is very important stops. And we'll see the global influence, to building the ecosystem here. So I'm very looking forward, in next year and how the whole ecosystem can be continuous build, yeah.
Okay, I think with that, we just stop the clock. So I think we ran out of time. They will be hanging out later, so if anyone's shy, want to reach out to them, please do so. Sorry for exposing you guys. So anyway, thank you so much for our panelists.